I do my best to call balls and strikes. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I want to keep it 100, and I don't want to resort to name calling. I want to be nice. I want to be kind. I want to be gracious. And this CNN reporter did something that has blown me away, and also Black conservative perspective. And I'm going to comment on this because I think this is the down the middle reporting that we need. This is what will make the media great again, if that is at all possible.
President Trump is having a moment. I'm Michael Smerconish in New York City. The first 5 months of Trump 2.0, they're in the books. I'm not shy about voicing my disagreement here with President Trump or doing so on radio. Often, whether it's trade, border control, Iran, I find myself agreeing with the goal, but not the approach. But viewed objectively, I have to say that Donald Trump has just had the best week or best 10 days of his second term. I'm still not sure bombing Iran was warranted. As I said last week, I'd have liked to have seen the evidence of Iran being on the nuclear doorstep rather than take Prime Minister Netanyahu's word for it.
See, I appreciate that. I, too, am not sure, how I feel about it. And I don't think in the short term we'll really understand the implications. However, you can look at things objectively. You don't have to agree with the decision. You don't have to agree with the specifics of the things. But sometimes you just have to be honest, and you have to give credit where credit is due.
Especially in the face of what DNI Tulsi Gabbard had testified in March and what Trump himself was saying right up until Israel launched its strike against Iran. But the mission was carried out with stealth and with precision. There were no American casualties. And while Congress is divided after receiving briefings on the extent of the damage, I'm sure that we've derailed Iran's nuclear program, at least temporarily. And there's some valuable deterrent effect for America's adversaries who witnessed last week's exercise.
That's important to me because I saw a segment on CNN where they said three contradicting things all in the same segment. They said, number one, we shouldn't have bombed them because they were not on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. So that's the first thing they said. Then they said that Trump should not be taking credit for something because it wasn't all his doing. It was something that was lined up by the Biden administration. So first, they're saying that it's a bad thing. Then they're saying that he shouldn't take credit for this particular strike. And they say, well, the strike was unsuccessful anyway, and it's only pushed them back a couple of months. Now, if you're just being objective and if you're just looking at the facts, all three of those things cannot be true at the same time. But as I was saying, I really like what this reporter is saying in his commentary because he's just talking about objective facts, but he's also making it very clear what his feelings and his views are on those particular things.
Then last Tuesday, President Trump left the White House en route to Europe. At the time, there was a question as to whether Israel and Iran would honor a ceasefire. That caused the president to offer the most unfiltered, non-controversial, direct words that I can recall anybody ever saying about the Middle East.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Cut to The Hague, where he arrived for NATO meetings and was able to wrangle an agreement from our allies to more than double their defense spending target from 2% of gross domestic product to 5% by 2035.
Now, no matter how you feel about the leader of the United States, the fact that he's saying that one country should not foot the bill for defense of an entire continent sounds like a reasonable thing to say from the leader of the company or the country that is footing the bill. So now what's happening is the UN is saying that the members are going to increase their spending. That has to be something that you have to look at objectively and say, that's more equitable, that's more fair.
Also, while at NATO, in a press availability, he did something rare for Trump and I found rewarding. He showed empathy. It came in an exchange with a Ukrainian journalist who said that her husband was a soldier. She asked whether the U.S. would supply her country with Patriot missiles.
Are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Wow.
And
I can see you very, it's amazing.
and me with the kids, I'm in Warsaw actually, because he wanted me to be.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He's.
He's there now. They do want to have the anti-missile missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available. I wish you a lot of luck. I mean, I can see it's very upsetting to you.
Now, I'll be honest, I've seen and I've heard stories of this side of Donald Trump numerous times. I saw an interview many years ago when Trump was running for the first time. It was an interview with Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson was saying that he can't say negative things about Donald Trump or call Donald Trump a racist because when everybody else gave up on him, Donald Trump picked up the phone and called him. Piers Morgan, as much as I don't like Piers Morgan told a similar story where when Piers Morgan had been kicked off the air in the UK for something that he said that later was proven to be correct. When he was kicked off the air, he was not on the air in the US either. He had no real platform to do anything for Donald Trump. Donald Trump picked up the phone and called him and said, "How are you doing?" Now, again, you have good traits and bad traits in everybody, but quite often you see what you're looking for. And that display of empathy, this news commentator is saying that it's a rare thing, but I have seen and heard about it many other times. Now, let's be honest, Trump can say and do some really off the hinge type of things. He can say some mean and horrible things to people. Sometimes I think it's just him being him and he's just getting caught up in the moment. I don't condone it. I don't support it. But you have to call balls and strikes, like I always say. So when he says a good thing or when he displays empathy, you have to be open and honest, and you do have to be able to give him credit in those moments.
So say hello to your husband, okay?
Also in that presser, he was more reflective and respectful than usual of our allies.
They want to protect their country. And they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff. And we're here to help them protect their country.
Back at home, Trump claimed that he's reached a trade deal with China and soon expects the same with India. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Bloomberg that the deal was signed earlier this week. China's Commerce Ministry said Friday the two sides had further confirmed the details of the framework. Of course, Trump's initial imposition of tariffs wreaked havoc on American markets back in the spring. But now the markets have rebounded and grown. The S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs just yesterday. And it's not just the stock market. Inflation, the great economic fear of recent times, seems to be tamed. The rate is now reported at 2.4%, down from a high of 7% just 4 years ago.
And the thing is, a lot of people aren't happy about that because there are a lot of people that are more interested in seeing Trump fail than seeing America win. Thomas Sowell, who's one of my favorite writers, philosophers, economists, he said something. And when you get this in life, it makes things make more sense. He said that quite often the reason why people don't want to admit they're wrong is because of this statement. People will forgive you for being wrong, but people will not forgive you for being right, especially as the passing of time proves you more right as it proves them more wrong. So people who are just 100%, I don't like the phrase, but Trump deranged, people who feel that there's nothing he could ever do or say that is in any way positive, they have to dig in on that. So if they give him credit on one thing, it kind of undermines their stance of he is pure evil. So they can't give him credit on the economy. When they were saying 100% that the tariffs are going to cause inflation, they said 100%. There's no way anything else can happen. And now that they're being proven wrong, at least in the short term, they're saying, well, it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. And that's not good for the U.S. economy. Quite often, they will talk down the economy just to be able to undermine a Trump policy or a Republican policy or position.
Meanwhile, blue-collar workers have seen real wage growth of 1.7% in Trump's first 5 months. This is the largest such increase in nearly 3 generations. Notwithstanding its impact on our national debt, there's also hope among some that Trump's big, beautiful bill will give further financial relief to blue-collar workers, as well as create incentives to build more factories in the U.S. Some already see this happening. For instance, General Electric has just announced that it'll invest almost $500 million in moving production of washing machines from China to Kentucky. And then there's the border. Crossings have slowed to a trickle. According to CBP's May update, Southwest border encounters have fallen to about 282 a day, a drop of 93% from last year and the lowest since the early 1960s. Perhaps the loudest cheering for those border numbers is coming from America's Latino community, which might initially sound counterintuitive. On Thursday, Pew Research.
Well, it doesn't sound counterintuitive if you think about it just rationally. So I have nephews in Texas, and I lived for a while in Texas. And I know that a lot of businesses, even when we had our business, you have to hire somebody that can speak to the customers. So you have to hire somebody that is very minimal bilingual, because you will have a lot of customers that come in that do speak English, but because Spanish is their native tongue, they feel more comfortable speaking in Spanish. So when you have a lot of people that are coming in that are newer immigrants, whether it be legal or illegal, they're going to suppress the income for certain jobs. It's also going to mean that you're going to have more people that companies and businesses need to serve that may not be English speaking. So if you are an immigrant that has been in the country for a while, that has come over legally, and you are working and you have kids, you have nephews, you have nieces that are looking for a job, you don't want them to have unnecessary competition, especially competition from people that are working off the books and therefore will work for less. Now, if you happen to be a Black American, or like my nephews who don't speak Spanish, it just makes it a little bit difficult to get those entry-level jobs. So, of course, people that are here and are struggling as it is don't want that additional competition for entry-level roles. And there's no dishonor in starting a job working at McDonald's or starting in an entry-level role, because that gives you the skills to be able to work up. But when you have a lot of people going after those jobs, some of which who will do it for little or nothing, it makes it harder for other people. So that should not be a surprise that legal immigrants are backing this policy.
Released an enormous data analysis of the 2024 election, which contains several surprises. High on that list, President Trump won a bigger percentage of the Latino vote than previously believed. Hillary Clinton had a 38% lead over Trump among Hispanics in 2016. Joe Biden beat Trump in this demo by 25 percentage points. Kamala Harris's margin among these same voters over Trump, just 3 points. Even more surprising, perhaps, Pew Research concludes that if everyone had voted in 2024, contrary to the widely held belief that higher turnout helps Democrats, Trump would still have won. The data show 44% of non-voters said that they would have gone for Trump, compared to 40% of non-voters who would have gone for Harris. So if more had voted, his margin would have grown.
I've got to be honest. Whatever happened in 2020 was the best thing that could have happened to Donald Trump. Because if he had just been president for 2 consecutive terms, he wouldn't have been as focused as he is now. He wouldn't have been able to get as much done. He wouldn't have had 4 years to think about what he wants to do and really work towards legacy. I think in those 4 years, regardless of what you think happened in that 2020 election, I think it was to a degree a blessing if you support this agenda. Obviously, for those of you who don't, it's probably been a curse that he's come back with so much focus, a team of people who, like with everybody wants loyalists on their team. So when they make it look as if it's unique to one side, it's not. You always want people who are going to support your agenda, people who are in lockstep with you, and people who aren't going to leak stories or undermine your agenda or the policies that you're trying to put in place.
Yesterday came a huge decision from the Supreme Court. The High Court declared that federal district judges exceeded their authority when issuing nationwide injunctions against Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. This will, of course, strengthen executive power both for Trump and for his successors. And finally, a Democratic socialist just won the nomination for mayor of New York City. And perhaps you're wondering, well, how does that affect Trump? It gives him the perfect foil, someone to play off in future political battles. This morning's New York Post references campaign literature for Zohran Mamdani, which advocates for increased taxation for, quote, richer and whiter neighborhoods. Just imagine what Trump will do with that. Winning became a punchline that Trump's opponents used to lampoon him in his first administration. He was a political novice then, surrounded by a team with which he was unfamiliar, and he was probably as surprised as the rest of us were that he won the election. This time is different. This time he came with a plan and a cabinet with senior advisors comprised of loyalists all well known to the president. And recently, he's exhibited a more layered approach to governing on both the domestic and international front, no longer solely guided by winning each day's news cycle. By any objective measure, President Trump has his opponents on the run.
Wow. Wow. That was an amazing job. That was an objective analysis. That was as objective as I've ever seen on CNN. Okay, man. For this one segment alone, maybe CNN should get his guy, I don't know, maybe a primetime spot or something. I think he should get Abby Phillips' job, right? Give this guy Abby Phillips' job if you're not going to give it to Scott Jennings, right? They should just give it to Scott Jennings.
For sure, they should definitely give it to Scott Jennings. But what I would say is when people give you these objective views and they're willing to at least give credit when and where credit is due, it makes you more likely to listen to them maybe on the things that you don't agree about. So for the last 4 years when people were saying, look, maybe that Joe Biden is losing some speed. He's losing some of the cognitive sharpness that he once had. And people were like, no, he's smarter than everybody. He's running circles around people. We all knew it wasn't true. And you don't have to go to the extreme to prove a point. So what people could have said is, look, he is a little bit slower than he used to be, but he's getting the job done. But what they did is they went to the extreme. They said that what we were seeing with our own eyes was a lie. And then when people will lie to you about something that is really obvious that you've seen with your own eyes, then you have to question them about the things that they're telling you that you don't see and don't have access to the information. So I really appreciate this segment. And, you know, as with anything, people are going to get it right sometimes. People are going to get it wrong sometimes. I think this commentator got it spot on as far as just detailing what's going on in the moment. It can swing completely the other way. All of these things can fall apart. You know, the big, beautiful bill might not pass. There's lots of things that can happen. But in the moment, I think what he's done, he has encapsulated the last 10 days of the Trump era. But Scott Jennings is still my dude.
But if it's not Scott Jennings, give it to this guy. Because you have more of this, right, on CNN. Who knows? Maybe they have more viewership, right? This dude doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to basically become a liberal debater in a show in which they're supposed to be the moderator, right? So, of course, you had liberals respond to this, and they were really upset. They're really upset with this guy telling the truth about how great of a week President Trump has had. Take a look.
What are your thoughts at social media? You can hit me up on all the usual platforms, and I'll read some throughout the course of the program. From the world of X, what in the hell are you talking about? Damn, you've set the bar so low for Trump that an ant can't crawl underneath. I don't understand the second part of it, but okay. But what am I talking about? I'm talking about offering an objective analysis in view of what's transpired in the last 2 weeks that I've laid out substantively and with data. He's been on a roll. It might not be the role that you desire, but I like the word that David used and that Selena Zito used in her column this morning, consequential. Who among us could deny how consequential Trump 2.0 is turning out to be? But in order for you to recognize that, you need to have an open mind about what's transpiring.
Well, liberals don't have open minds, right? They don't have open minds at all, and they just can't admit when Trump is right? They just can't do it. Like, for example, Senator Chris Murphy, I saw this segment when he was being confronted by Kristen Welker on giving Trump credit for closing the border. And we all know that, like, border crosses are basically zero, right? We have net migration to the country. And this guy, Chris Murphy, he can't even just fix his lips to say, yeah, Trump has done a good job on closing the border. He can't do it. Take a look.
You know, border crossings are at a record low. Do you give the Trump administration some credit for that? And are you, when you look at those figures, do you think things are moving in the right direction, at least in that regard, Senator?
No, I don't give them credit for that, because border crossings are low because they're violating the law every day. So we have a law in this country that says if you are fleeing terror or torture from another country, you can come here and apply for asylum. The Trump administration has suspended that law. They are not allowing anybody to come here to apply for asylum.
See, now the problem that I have with this is we talk about the law a lot, but then they only support the law. Some people only support the law when the law aligns with what they think should happen. And let's just say they would have changed the law and make it that, you know, people couldn't seek asylum. I mean, I don't think that would be the right thing to do. But let's just say if they change the law, then this person would still have an issue with the fact that they've changed the law. Even if they would have changed the law that now what was happening was in line with the law, he would still have an issue. So it's better quite often to have a principle, have a position, state your position and the reason why you have that position. And then you can be a lot more consistent, because the thing is, both sides switch. So when you're in power, all the things that you don't like, you go against, like the filibuster. 1 minute Republicans support it, the other minute they don't. It depends on if they're in or if they're out. That's okay that you call people out on both sides, but at least have a consistent principle that you can apply. That way, if you change your decision on something, you can just change your principle. So change your principle and then everything else will line up with that. But this guy is just going to go on and talk about the border and not really speak to the heart of the issue, which is, this is one of those issues that most people in America agreed with. They wanted to, at least for the short term, get the border under control. And if you remember, leading up to the election, the Democratic Party leaders were saying that the only way that it can be closed is if the Republicans sign this bill. But Trump went in and no bill was signed. He just did executive orders. Now, I'm not saying I agree with executive orders 100%, but it just proves that what they were saying in the first place was not true.
We wrote that bipartisan bill last year to reform the asylum process, to make sure that only the right people are coming in and that we judge those cases expeditiously at the border. So it's true, there are very few people crossing on a daily basis, but that's because the Trump administration is violating the law. And it should matter to every American that on so many facets, the Trump administration doesn't care about the law. This is becoming a lawless administration. We are on a road to see our democracy atrophy to the point that it will be unrecognizable. And the border is just one example of many ways in which this administration doesn't care about the law.
Blah, blah, blah. What's going to interest me is what's going to happen in a year and a half or 2 years from now when the Trump administration is winding down and he's no longer the person that they can vilify. Because what I find interesting is every Republican has been called a Nazi pretty much. Every Republican president has been called a racist. So it's kind of like the same thing over and over and over again. And I remember when Ron DeSantis, when Trump had been banished and it looked like his political career was over, and Ron DeSantis started to do well. And I remember hearing a news report where they were saying, well, actually, Ron DeSantis is more dangerous than Trump because Trump is kind of a clown and a buffoon, whereas Ron DeSantis is an attorney who is a governor of a state, so he's going to understand how to maneuver the political minefield a lot better, which actually makes him more dangerous. So it makes you wonder, is it what these people stand for, or is it the individuals? I would say that politics are very tribal, and people have a team, they stick with their team. No matter what their team does, they support their team. And no matter what the other team does, they're always going to criticize what the other team does. And it's not helpful. And the reason why it's not helpful, because they know there's a certain segment of the population that no matter what they do will vote for them. So this is why they're always trying to get the independents like me, because they know there's some people right around the edges that will look at the details, look at the policies, and make a decision. They might vote Republican in one election, they might vote Democrat in another, they might look down the ticket and vote Republican and Democrat for different roles in government. And I think that's really a more effective way of doing this. And this is how we get more honest politicians. Well, as I said, I am here to call balls and strikes. I'm here to talk about things that I see the black conservative perspective talk about. Let's try to get him to 1 million subscribers, and make sure you check out his original video where I got a lot of this content. And I will be doing another video on AOC. I'll definitely be doing one on Jasmine Crockett.